Hey everybody, this is my 20-gallon Angelfish tank, and tonight we're going to do a little bit of maintenance on it. I really either need to top off the water or just do a water change, and since I got to get in there and clear out some of the plants, I may as well just go ahead and do a water change. It probably needs a new filter by now anyway. You can see how low the water has gotten. So with these open top tanks, especially these open top tanks with big lush growth coming out of the top of them, they tend to evaporate water very quickly, or I guess technically the stuff that goes through the plants would be considered transpiring rather than evaporating. So that's about it. I'm just going to do a simple water change, and we are going to get in there and probably pull some of these plants out. I don't know if I'm going to get it on video or not. You can see how all of these little, I guess I can get some of it on video and give you an idea what I'm talking about just by doing this. See that little mass of roots right there? That is a brand new Water Sprite plant right there. And every one of these little clusters in here is new baby Water Sprite plants. And so I've got to go through here and thin all of that out. And you can see how much root, well, you can almost see how much root is in there. So that's going to be a lot of plants, and I'm going to really open that up quite a bit, and then we will get a lot more light shining back in there. So my beautiful angelfish that has some pearl scale genetics in it absolutely sparkles when the light shines on it. And then of course I have diamond tetras in there, and they also sparkle when the lights shine on them, obviously. So let me get to it. I'm not going to bother doing any video of the plant removal. You got an idea of what I got to do and get in there and pull all those out. I'm going to do my best to leave the rest of the foliage alone. We're just going to try to pull some of that lower stuff out that's blocking the light, and then we'll have a little chat about plant nutrients and what I've done and the experiment I'm running on this tank and that sort of thing once I'm finished with the maintenance. So there's your before, and there's your after. So I really opened it up. I really took a lot of the Water Sprite out of there, and I even cut some of the fronds out. And by frond, if you're not familiar with what I mean, I'm talking about one of these, I guess another way you could think about it as a branch, even though technically this is a fern, so that would be a frond. Some of the ones that were down low were older and yellowing and kind of dying off, so I trimmed them out completely. And then I had one or two that were just growing out in the way where I didn't particularly want them, so I trimmed them out of there too. And I removed all of the little young ones in there that were getting in the way and sort of blocking it up. So still looks thick and dense, but it does let a ton more light in. At some point I'll have to get in there and break that up a little bit and thin it out even more because it is getting kind of big. I'll also have to get in there and probably thin that Java fern out at some point. Now don't forget, I do sell my plants, so a lot of that stuff I just pulled out of here. Java fern, temple plant. I've got a little bit of Anubias right now. I've always got stuff for sale, so I'll put my email down below. If you're interested, you can check that out. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is the little CalMag experiment I was doing in this tank. There's not a lot else to talk about as far as the water change goes. I wiped the glass down, I did a filter change, and I did maybe a 50% water change or thereabouts, maybe 40% or something like that. But removing all of that Water Sprite really was the key to getting this tank nice and opened up. The angelfish has room to swim around now. And of course, as I said, we can see the light shining down through there, so we get a nice good look at the angelfish. And as I mentioned before, I really do believe it's got some pearl scale genetics in it. If we can get it to turn sideways a little, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. All those scales have that sort of ripply, cupped, iridescent look to them, which is indicative of a pearl scale. Absolutely beautiful angelfish. I really like this one. And yet again, this is another mixed veil from the big chain pet store that I paid a few dollars for. If you're patient and you're particular, you know, you don't just grab the first pretty angelfish you see, because they're all pretty. They don't make an ugly angelfish. But if you really wait and you really watch and you wait until you find that one that just really just speaks to you, you can find some stunning angelfish in the mixed veil or assorted angelfish bin at the big chain pet stores. If you're familiar with my videos and you're familiar with my gourami tank, that huge angelfish I have in my gourami tank, that one came from PetSmart. Again, just a random mixed veil, probably $4.99, $5.99. I don't know what they sell for, but something like that. Definitely not one of my exotic, expensive angelfish. I do have some of those, but some of my best looking ones are mixed veils and assorted angelfish from the PetSmart. So, getting back to my point about the experiment I was doing, I've got some Water Sprite that's in a grow out tank in my other room, and it does not look spindly like this. It doesn't have these real fine, almost pine needle like appearance. It still looks like the full big rounded leaves of Water Sprite. It's got leaves like that on it, that, you know, what I think of as looking like the Water Sprite leaves, but it's got leaves like that growing emergent. They're up and out of the tank, and it looks beautiful. It doesn't look like this. This looks like a nutrient deficiency to me. Now, I have had people assure me that this is what it will look like when it grows emergent. Once it gets out of the water, it's going to start looking like this. And I'm not necessarily disputing that, but it does make me wonder why the one in my bathroom, in my grow out tank, looks so different. Here, hang on half a second and I'll show it to you. So, duckweed notwithstanding, that Water Sprite, I've been leaving it alone for a couple of weeks now just to see what it's going to do. And, you know, it's not like I've taken Water Sprite that was submerged and I've rolled it over and turned it over, because this tank is full of plants. If I stick my hand in there, it's just green plants all the way to the bottom. It's got tons of Java fern. It's got a Nubius in there. All of that is just underneath of that floating Water Sprite. Again, that is a 10-gallon tank that is just packed full of plants. And occasionally I would get in there and sort of turn everything over to make sure the stuff in the bottom was getting light on it and everything. But for the last couple of weeks, I've just been leaving it alone completely in order to see whether or not we're going to get any of that spindly growth, or if it's going to continue to grow nice and lush like this. I'm also not sure about this sort of browning. I don't know if that's coloring up from like a phosphorus coloring. A lot of times you'll get plants that get some red tinge or purple tinge in them. That doesn't look like it's dying off brown, but it might be. So I'm kind of keeping my eye on that too. But long story short, it looks like that. It doesn't look spindly. And I'm going to let it keep going this way to find out, you know, if it ever does change over. So let's go back to the tank a minute and I'll explain what the difference between this and that is. So the main difference between that tank and this tank is, A, that tank gets no maintenance whatsoever. As the water evaporates out of it, I just pour more water in right there from the shower head. I used to keep fish in that tank a long time ago. But I haven't in a long time. Again, it's just got so much plants in there that there's just no room for fish. It had fish in it when I first started as a grow out tank. I figured the fish would provide nutrients, but over time there's just so much crud and mulm. I've got a few pieces of wood in the bottom of the tank that just break down over time, so there's plenty of nutrients in that tank. I have also used my watering can that I use to water my houseplants, that I've had my all-purpose plant food, which is it's got all the trace elements, not just the macro, but it's got the micronutrients as well, and it's got my CalMag solution in it. So I've poured some of that in that tank on a few occasions, and the last time I checked the total dissolved solids in that tank, it was over 5,000 parts per million. So we've got that going on in that tank, whereas this tank has nothing. You know, I got about 200 parts per million dissolved solids in this tank, and none of that is calcium or magnesium. So I took a little of my CalMag solution and I put it in this tank, hoping that it might have an impact on this Water Sprite here. But since I started the experiment, I actually wound up buying some Flourish, we'll call it full spectrum plant food, that covers everything, macro, micro, etc., etc. And I'm going to be using that in my tank upstairs with my ram in it to see if I can bring my temple plant back to life. It's looking pretty rough, and I don't know if it's going to make it or not. It's not quite dead yet, but we're getting there, so we'll see if that Flourish doesn't help. So since I've got Flourish and I'm using it in that tank for that plant, that was the whole point of this experiment. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a little flourish in this tank or whatever else. Maybe not, because it doesn't seem to need it. Again, I'm not sure why this one still looks all spindly and the other one looks so thick and lush and still looks like Water Sprite. So I don't know. But there you go. There's my off-the-cuff video. I'm honestly not even sure if we had started on some thread at the beginning part of this video. It took a couple hours for the tank to settle down and the water to clear up enough to do the second part of this video. So I kind of lost the thread from the start to the second half here. So again, if we had started talking about something and I never finished those thoughts, I apologize. I guess I could have gone back and previewed the video, but I don't know. Again, this is an off-the-cuff kind of video. I just grabbed my camera and here we are. So thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe. You never know what you're going to get from me, as I just described. And don't forget, of course, this one here is my 20-gallon angelfish. And don't forget to check my email down below if you're interested in any of those plants. So thanks again for watching. And I'll see you real soon in the next one.